Hi, everybody. It's Bond, Virginia Bond, and I am here to do an advanced Google Classroom session with you. I am recording the session, so you'll have it. And I have put the link to my document in the chat, so you have it. I see lots of you in there. Feel free to make a copy so you have it and you can run with it. That document will stay there. It's always going to be there for your reference point. But I thought what would probably make the most sense is if I kind of just popped into a Google Classroom and I kind of dug into it for you and kind of showed you some best practices and some ideas of what to use. So my goal is I'm going to set my alarm. I know we have an hour. What I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to get through what I need to in about 50 minutes. So that leaves me 10 minutes for questions or more or whatever we need. And then I can do questions. And then my next session is in the same space. So if we still have time, we will finish the questions up there, or you can stay and you can ask those questions and others. That's where I want to go. So feel free to put questions into the chat while we go. I have the ability to watch both. I am going to watch both screens at the same time. I also, you can unmute yourself and ask a question too. I'm okay with that. Keeping people muted is usually a better option because it does keep some of the sound down on the back. And okay, so here we go. I'm going to share my screen. I think we're good to go. All right, so can everybody see that over there? Can everybody see my screen? Awesome. Thank you, Carly. The head nod is awesome. I appreciate it. All right, so let's talk about Classroom in general. So the first thing I'm going to do is get there. So I typically just go to classroom.google.com because it makes my life the easiest. And I'm actually going to use my NARIC account because that's going to be the most similar to you as it's a domain. So just a couple really quick housekeeping things. Know that you can move your classes all around, right? We can move them and wiggle and jiggle them as you see fit. And the difference between classes, if you have an arrow like this, it means it is a class you are teaching. And if you have a circle on it, it means a class that you are a student in. So these two classes here, which are actually run by Nerica, are two that I'm a student in, and basically so that we have a playbox kind of sandbox environment that we can be in. So you may have some. So I typically always put the ones that I am a student in down at the bottom, and I always keep my teaching ones up towards the top. That's just for me, logistically, it makes more sense. So I'm going to go into this classroom right here. So obviously this is a class that Erica and I do together. It's actually just one of our training spaces that we use as an ERIC team. So let me do this. I'm going to get rid of that. The first thing I always like to talk to people about is using a very specific naming convention with your classes. So this has come really out of pandemic teaching. A lot of people are just like putting Math 7 on it. And I'm not throwing any math teachers under the bus, but if you are a special educator and you are in many, many classes and you are a co-teacher in those classes, trying to dig for which class you're looking for is very hard to find. So using your last name, the name of the class, and then the period that you were in can be very, very helpful. So if I was teaching a math class second period, it would say Bond Math 7. And it's really not for you, and it's really not for your kids. It may be for your principals, and it may be for your special educators, just to keep them organized, because they are co-teaching in a lot of different classes, or they may be watching kids in different classes. This allows them to navigate through those classes as well. You may have 6, they may have 20. Okay, it's going to ease their life up just a little bit. We also found that in many, many districts, the principals are in there so that they can assign a substitute in with an account in on a day. So if a principal's in there and they have everybody's Google Classroom, that can become overwhelming if they don't know whose is whose. So the way to change those, you come over here into the settings, you click on it, and you can just change the name of it. So I could make this 2021, it'll pop up in the title. I also always put a year on. You can put what in here you want. You don't have to fill everything in. I like these two things filled out. It makes the most sense to me. And the reason why is when it comes out into my class components here, so when I go back out to look at my classes, you'll see it has a second line underneath it. If I archive this class and I go to pull stuff out of it, like I want to reuse a post from that, it's going to be easier for me to navigate to it to find what year it was. Because I might do things in a 2-year cycle. So I might be wanting things from the 18-19 year or the 19-20 year or the 20-21 year. If I have that year on it, it's a little easier for me to follow and to find where I am. So naming conventions is one. The next one, you really want to archive those old classes. So like I was just saying, archiving is taking those classes, putting them out of the way so that you can't see them. You don't delete Google Classrooms. You archive them. You put them like around the corner in the invisible bookcase that you can't see. And the reason for that is so that I am able to access that information when I want to reuse a post. So all I need to do with this one right here, let's say I want to get rid of this one, I come into it and I just click archive. It's going to go away and it tells me it will be archived for all participants. It can't be modified by the teachers or the students unless it's restored, and it will move. So basically, if your students are in it and you archive it, it's going to go away. They will be unenrolled. The contents stay there, but they will be unenrolled from the classroom. So I've done that with that one, moved out of the way, no longer have to worry about it. So archiving is very helpful. All right, so let's talk about assignments, and then we're going to kind of dig a little bit more into some other things. I'm going to come right into classwork, and I'm going to talk about assignments. I went a little out of order, but this was brains. I could be here, or it could be in the other. I lied, I'll stay on stream. Let's say I want to make an announcement. Good morning, everyone, or how about good afternoons, because gosh knows we don't want to do mornings twice. Please stay tuned for information for tomorrow's session. Okay, so that's what I'm going to push out. Now, I have multiple classes, so I can push this to all my classes at one time. Very helpful because I don't have to do that work individually. I can click them all, push it all, and post it all. I also, let me post, I have to actually push the button. And when you post to multiple classrooms, know that it's going to take time. It's not fast, right? Depending on when you're doing it. And you'll know by your building when the peak times are. Most districts, noon is a bad time because people might be on the Wi-Fi doing other things, right? Lunchtime is always a really rough space, but that's not too bad. But you'll know those peak times. Sometimes it's 3 o'clock. Sometimes it's 8:15, just kind of thinking of when those are. So I also can do, Erica, check this out. She'd be like, what are you sending me, right? And I can send something to just like one, oh, she can't get it because she's not in this class. We'll make Dominique. We'll send it to Dominique. Dominique, Dom, oh my goodness, Dom. Check this out, and I'm going to attach something really quickly. I'm going to just upload something from my desktop, which I have there. I'm going to browse to it. I put something there before. There's a safety check. It's pulling in anything, and I can assign it just to one student. Again, this is pushing something just through my stream. So when we talk about the stream versus the classwork, stream is really just for announcements. That's its purpose. Announcements and discussions, not things like, it should be no assignments should go in here. So that kind of brings me to my next part. You'll notice that this stream is very clean. I have a very clean stream. The only thing in here are my announcements, everything that I posted from my stream. Streams have no timelines. They have no due dates. They're like standing at the classroom door, inviting people in, talking to them as they enter, almost like bell ringers. I'm not having assignments with them. You could put Google Meet pieces in here if you wanted, but general announcements or discussions, not dated or graded items. So I have my stream is those kind of things, and then my classwork is in my classwork. That's not how Google Classroom runs the first time you set it up. The first time when you come in and you set up your Google Classroom, the default for classwork is that it sits on the stream. So it looks more like this. And you see circles with your avatar or your picture and circles with little icons in them. So this is what I call a dirty, muddy, yucky stream, because your classwork has gone into your stream and it's been difficult for your students to navigate. And why that happens is because that's the default for Google unless you have changed it. The Google Classroom default is to show condensed notifications of your classwork on the stream. For your students, for students with disability, that is very difficult to navigate, because just like Facebook, it changes every time you post something. So if you post your assignment and then do 3 announcements to your kids, the assignment gets pushed down and out of the way. They don't necessarily see it unless you've trained them to go into classwork. Most kids are pretty lazy. They're not going to do that. I'm not saying all of them, but they don't understand where things sit. So what I do is I always come into my settings. I come down under general. I come into classwork on the stream and I hide the notifications. Then I save it. And what that does, keeps my announcements in the stream. It keeps my classwork in the classwork, and it keeps those two things separate, much easier for students to navigate their way through them. So now you can see here I only have announcements, and here I only have classwork. So it's keeping it much cleaner, much easier to navigate through. So when we think about that, it helps us keep that delineation through the two things. So I wrote here about posting to multiple classrooms at a time. We're going to do that next, because this may be, I know there have been issues with some school tool to, or Google to school tool grading issues. And we may have figured out the issue, I don't know if it's specific enough, but we have a generic idea of what it is. So we probably all know how to create an assignment, because you're going to come in, you click the create button. I'm under classwork, by the way. We come into assignment, we create an assignment, we go through. So let's do a few things with this. We title it. Let's use a real title, like a date, not like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, because there are 40 Tuesdays, 40 Wednesdays, 40 Thursdays. Thank God there's not 40 Mondays and 40 Fridays. We get some of those off, right? Phew. So there's 39 Wednesdays this year. But if you use something like that, it's hard for your students to navigate through, to find, and it's much easier to send a student to Google Classroom and say, go look for the 11-4. That's the stuff you missed. That's what I need you to do. So if it's dated, it's easier to find. And today's assignment is going to be learn about the Chrome settings and the new safety check. That's what I'm going to give my team. So I'm going to have some directions. Number 1. So I like to number my directions instead of paragraph my directions. Paragraphing, when I get a big set of text, it's very difficult to navigate through. It's really not. I will read it, but you're more apt to find students who are not going to navigate through that entire text. They're going to say they did. It's like you giving the directions. There's 6 steps, and by the time you get to step 6, they don't know where step 1 was, because they don't understand the process. So putting numbers to them is much easier. So this is going to be open the Chrome browser settings. I'm just going to put some quick ones in here. Chrome browser settings. Click on I should have put it to click on settings, safety check, do a safety check of your account. Okay. So I'm going to add a component in here. My first thing I'm going to upload a file. I have the file on my desktop, so I know exactly where it is, but I could put something in from my Google Drive, right? So that's my 3. I have 1, 2, 3, all done. Those pieces are all done. I'm going to add a 4th one. 4, create a Google Doc and explain why this check is important. So you notice I didn't make the document for my kids. I could make the document and push it to them and make a copy, right? I could, but when we're talking middle school, high school, your older kids can make their own copies. 5, 6, 7, depending on their skills, maybe not. 8, 9, 11, 12, absolutely they can. Maybe they're not there yet, but they can make those documents. When they are done, I'm going to give my last direction is, when finished, turn in your Google Doc. So they know how to do that. Your good doc. How about your Google Doc? That would be better. Your Google Doc. So turn in your Google Doc. All right. So they're going to read this. So they're going to open the browser, they click on safety check, do a safety check, create a Google Doc, and explain why it's important. When finished, turn it in. Okay. Now, how do I want to push this out? So I could push it out to all of my classes, right? We all know that we can push this out to all of our classes. So I think this is where one of the things is starting to become a problem. When we use the integration from Google to School Tool for grades, School Tool doesn't let you have assignments that are named the same thing, right? We know that, so that makes sense, okay? So we typically don't do that. That's not the problem. For some reason, when we take an assignment in Google and we push it to multiple classrooms, it codes the same way somewhere on the back end. Does that make sense? So it maybe attaches for this one, it says 11-4 new. I don't know, let's just make that up. So it codes like that, and it pushes that name into all of these classes. Somehow School Tool is reading that as a replication and not seeing it as going into the individual classrooms. We don't know why, and we don't know where the breakdown is, but that's the reasoning behind it. So if you push this assignment to multiple classrooms, or you reused it, same reusing and pushing it like this, assigning it to multiple classrooms is just like reusing it. This one you're doing it the first time through. Reusing it is your, oops, I want to reuse it, right? We still should probably go in and rename this title. You don't have to do a lot. You could call it period 1 would be a rename of the title. So even while you push this assignment through, you're going to want to hit all your classrooms and edit the assignment to change the title of it. Okay? We think, I'm not guaranteeing anything, that is going to fix the problem of School Tool to Google integration. You see how my fingers are crossed? It's also something that School Tool is working on. The Mindex people are working on to see, but we did some kind of digging into it. I dug a little bit into the code that I could see within Google to see what's in there, to see if that's the issue. You can't get real far in, but we're hoping that that's the only thing that we can come up with. But the other thing, that's the first part. The next part is School Tool's got to come up with a way so it's not seeing that as a replication. So we're hoping that's going to work. Anyway, that's just good practice when we start to think about that. Yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
Just I noticed in my School Tool the connection not matching up as well, and it has nothing to do so far with me pushing out all of those assignments to all my classes. It does, however, seem highly affected by students that unsubmit and resubmit assignments over and over and over again. I don't know how to get the kids to stop doing that, but
beat them. No, just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I do find that the share between School Tool and Google Classroom is working without me renaming any of the assignments, except when students are unsubmitting and resubmitting
Are you
those
pushing your
assignments.
grades out on a regular basis? Are you doing it like daily? Are you doing it once a week? All of those things may matter.
Um, I do it probably once a week. And I definitely find that it matters if what time of day I'm doing that. So if the bandwidth at school is very highly being used, then my school tool connection and my Google Classroom may not pick up all the grades.
So I think those are things to keep in mind. Yes, for sure. So I like, the submitting.
One other thing, just for everyone else, where you're putting the date into your naming of Google Classroom, I put in the scheduled time of our Google Meet, and then my students aren't confused or they're not going back to their schedule every day to try to figure out what time they're supposed to log in with me.
So I'm going to give you another option with that too. That may help too. Great. That's a good one. I like that as well. That's a good time to do that, or a good place to put that. Awesome. So I'm just going to push this out. So that's like assignments. So this is assignments, pushing it to multiple classrooms. Again, bandwidth issues, pushing to multiple classrooms can take time. So let's go through and actually reuse a post this time. So I'm going to come out to reuse a post, and it's going to default to the last place you reused a post from. So if I had used a post from another class, it would be here. But these are all of the posts within this specific classroom. If I use the back arrow, I can go into all of my other classrooms that I have ever taught, including ones that I co-taught with teachers who teach for CRB, right? So I can pull any other classroom up. I can go in, this is why we archive our classrooms, and I can say, oh, this is a great one. I'm going to grab that session. I'm going to pull that and I'm going to reuse it. But I can also do this one right here. Create new copies of all attachments. I definitely want that. So if I've used something in another classroom, I don't have to go find the attachments I used. This will make me all the new copies that I need. I love that. It also gives you a new copy for all the classrooms that you may be posting it to, because I can reuse and then submit to multiple classrooms as well. I might find that, well, this was a really stupid naming convention, right? I might change how I want that in there and change all that up. But then you'll also see when I come in here, the ability to make a copy is still here because I'm reusing a post. So then I can push it all through. I can have, creating topics or whatever I want to do in there. All right, so I'm going to assign that and push that through. That's good. All right, let's see where I am. I just want to keep going. So this may affect grading. I just want to be careful with that. When we talk about topics, you can tell that Erica was in here because I have a kosher dill pickles topic, right? Silly girl. Pick some topics that make sense for you. If you want to do it by units, some people like to do their topics by that. Excuse me. I typically do daily assignments. And the reason this is for it's like headings in your classroom. I think of ELA teachers, they may want reading, writing, whatever, right? Journal, however you want them set up. It also allows your students to do some searching and they can come back through and they can look for things. Another trick in here, the Control F is a find feature that works within all of Google. So if your students need to look for settings, you notice as I started to type settings, it popped up. I'm pointing with my finger. You can see that, right? I started to type settings up here. It comes down here. So when I do that, it's going to highlight the word settings. So for your students, this is a great feature to be able to search for things that they're looking for. Or I know it was, let me do another one. Let's do find war. So here's an assignment on the Civil War. So your students can sort through. They can sort through and you can sort through as well to find the pieces that you're looking for. So that find feature works on any Google product, it works on any Word product, and it works on the internet anywhere, okay? So if you happen to be in a Wikipedia article and you're looking for one keyword or any large article, you can find that keyword by just using that Control F feature. Will help you find information. Okay, so I'm going to go down to the next page. So one of the things that I think is probably the most valuable in a Google Classroom is to have some kind of materials document. So I'm going to come in here, and this is a contact hours. In case you go remote, I would love to keep using the words in case, but when we go remote, because I think it's going to be inevitable for all of us at some point, this kind of document is going to be valuable for parents and for students alike. I like to call it one-stop shopping. You don't have to call it contact hours. You can call it resource document, doesn't really matter. But this is a place where all of my information would go, including things like links. So this one, when I built it the last time, they used Zoom, but you can have a Meet link in here. You can have the times for your classes all in here. So this has a schedule that's more along elementary lines for a schedule for them. You can have where you're meeting, the space. You can have meeting tools. You can have links. So if you are using certain tools, like if you're going to use the iReady and you need your students to have that address, you can put it right in there so they have it. If you're using things like Wonderopolis or you're using a textbook online, you can push it right to them in there. You can have other websites that are using. And what I did here is I created headings. So I added a heading to it and it gives me this sidebar. This allows me to navigate through the document easily. What this does is I'm updating one document, not 85 documents, and it's a consistent, constant place. So your students can constantly go to the same place. Not only is this good for students, it's great for parents as well, especially when we talk about littles, right? They have one document to go to where everything sits. I like to call this one-stop shopping. So this is a great thing to have in your classroom because you can make all your changes in here and you don't have to email your kids. You don't have to make any changes. You just say, remember to use that contact document. I don't care what you call it, right? Whatever you want to call it can be in there, and you can constantly update this and it will update in real time for your families, for your students. I think it as a resource document, it's great. It could be things like your anchor charts. If you're using anchor charts in the classroom, right? You can take pictures of them and put them in a Google slide presentation, and then you have them all. You'll always have them for reference. Are you using a rubric? Yep, put that in there so they know it's always there. Label it with materials because then they don't get their own copy. They're always just going in to look for it. If you're a math teacher and you have certain documents that they use all the time, you want to put that in there for them. Does that make sense? Okay, so this is like a go-to. You're building almost like a little mini database of components that they're going to have, and they have the pieces that they need at their fingertips. Excuse me, I'm going to grab a drink. So be very specific when you're typing out directions. The reason I number my directions is because if students get lost in them, and it doesn't really matter what they are. So here's a set of 4, right? 4 directions. If my students get lost in the directions, they can come to me and say, Mrs. Bond, I got lost at number 3, rather than I don't understand what to do, right? I can even say to students, where are you getting lost in the directions? How far did you get, right? Did you get 1? Did you get 2? And if you notice a couple students are not getting 3, you might want to go in and you might want to edit them to make them a little clearer, because we know that some students are really good at it, some students are not. And that we are starting to see that, right? We're getting students that get it. It's very intuitive. We're getting students that don't. And then we're getting other students kind of in this like wave in the middle that are kind of like hit or miss. So these number directions will help them ask you a question as well. So they're going to be very valuable for you and very valuable for them to see where they're kind of missing the boat. They are not optional, because if you haven't figured it out, and I'm sure you have, a lot of them don't know what to do, right? They're just like, I don't know where to click. And the more tools we give them, and the more, I don't want to say tools, the more systems we give them, like, and I'm not saying that this is wrong, but I've seen districts doing like Class Dojo and Class Dojo, and there was another one, the Seesaw and Google Classroom, which really all three of them kind of do the same thing, right? And then having kids submit all over the place, they don't understand. They are confused. And it would be better to use a few tools really, really well and go really in depth of them instead of like throwing everything that we typically would. They can't keep up. When they're with us, it's easy for us to guide them through that situation. When they're not, it is definitely hard, and kids are going to get lost. All right. So you can also, in your Google Classroom, you can differentiate instructions. So I'm going to take this assignment right here, and I'm actually going to reuse it. So I'm going to come into Recreate. I'm going to reuse this 11.3. Remember I said it defaults to the last classroom I used stuff from, and I want to use the classroom I'm in right now, and I want to use the 11.3a, this assignment right there. I want them to create new attachments. It's going to pull it in. It's going to pull a new piece in. It's going to grab it. I'm going to actually change the date to 11.4. Like, so this was why do we meet, or why do we vote on Tuesdays? Read the article. So, and I put some, pieces in here that I want students to kind of address. My God, my spelling was abhorrent when I did that. These are the pieces, and you can see what I might want to do is I might want to make this a little different. So for some of my students, I'm going to give it to these two. These two are going to get this assignment like this piece. So they're going to get, why do we vote on Tuesdays? And I'm going to give them the Google Doc. All right, so I'm going to assign. So what you can tell in here, I have these directions for these guys. I gave them the Google Doc, right? My other group that I assigned this to, I could do it for the rest of my class. I could make them create the Google Doc themselves and take this off. So that's how I'm kind of differentiating my instructions. Some students can do that, some students can't. I wouldn't have the same expectations for them in the classroom, so I'm going to differentiate this a little bit. I might actually give them a different reading piece. Another set of students give them a different reading piece, and all I have to do is change it over here in this when I'm assigning it out to my students. So I'm going to push that out to them. That's another way to differentiate. So one of my last ones is this one. So when we go through and I'm going to create a new assignment, but this time instead of uploading something from Google or uploading something from my desktop, I'm actually going to create within the system. So I'm going to come here, I'm going to say, take the Google form quiz. Okay, the Google form quiz, only if I can type. The Google form quiz. Now, if I add it, if I upload a quiz that I already have, and I have it grade, because a lot of us are using Google Forms and we're having it self-grade, which is great, and it all works. I have to manually go in and put those grades into Google Classroom, right? Everybody knows that, right? If I add it, if I create it from within the system of Google Classroom and I make it a quiz, which I'm doing, it will grade it if I choose that, and it will add the grades into my grade book. I'm going to say it one more time. If I add it, I already have the quiz already built. If I add the quiz up from my Google Drive and put it into Classroom, the form will still grade, but I have to manually enter the grades into the grade book. If I create the form as a quiz within Google Classroom, it will grade it and add the grades into Classroom. So I always caution people when you do this, when you go into a quiz, right, and we have it set to go, think about how you want your grades done. So if you choose later after manual review, they're not going to just go up. So we have to be careful. Think about what you need to grade. There are times when instant after each submission works. If you're doing a multiple choice question, it will work. I can guarantee your kids are going to cheat if you do that, just so you know. I mean, if they can. You also have this, because if your students are in Chromebooks, you can use the lock mode on a Chromebook. You can check that. That has to be turned on at the domain level when in a quiz. If they're not using a Chromebook, doesn't count. If they're using their own device, not going to count. If they're using a phone, it's not going to count, right? They have to be on a managed district Chromebook. So if go ahead.
Quick question.
Mm-hmm.
So if we left it on immediately after each submission, but unchecked, respondents can see missed questions, correct answers, wouldn't that prevent cheating because they couldn't see what they got wrong?
You're right, you couldn't, but I'll tell you what, you mean cheating from kid to kid. I'm meaning kids got phones.
Okay.
We can't stop that.
Okay.
Yep, you're right. Those two pieces, you absolutely can. If you don't let them see missed questions, if you don't let them see correct answers, that's going to help. Kids are they're gonna use the resources at hand. I mean, right? Unless we're watching them all the time. They're resourceful, and there's really nothing wrong with that. I mean, we want them to be resourceful later in life. It would be great if they didn't do it to cheat, but we can't control all of that. The locked mode works if we can guarantee they're on it, but it doesn't prevent them from having a phone near them. So, I mean, I'm trying to help as much as I can. And then you can save. Okay, so you create it all in there. It would come out. When you pushed it out, it would grade for you if that was the option you chose. All right, so that is grading within itself in the system. Oof, I'm going to keep going quick. I'm not going to worry about headers. If you want to learn how to do headers, it's easy enough. Two quick things in here. A Google form does not push a copy to every student. I have people ask me this all the time, right? You don't want individuals, you don't want 25 forms. The reason for a form is so you're not grading 25 tests. So they're all coming into one test so you can see them. But you can add a document in that looks like this. We're going to pull this one in. We can add this in, and then we have the three choices. The three choices of students can view the file, everybody reads one post-it. Students can edit the file, everybody edits one post-it. Or students can, you make a copy for each student, everybody gets their own post-it so they can do their own editing. Think about the level you want for your students as you're doing that. That will kind of guide your decision-making as you're working your way through that. It just depends on what you want. You can do it for all, you can do it for some, you can, make a decision about what you want. I'm going to push this to Colin. He's going to hate me. Okay, next one. Think about having a co-teacher in your classroom. It's going to be valuable if you're out. It's nice to have another set of eyes sometimes to see why things don't work. So that being said, if you are a co-teacher in a classroom and you're getting way too many emails, which does happen, special educators, you probably totally understand what I'm talking about because you're getting too many. These settings over here, the ones that are over on the right-hand side, are for this Google Classroom that you're in right now. The hamburger on the left-hand side, there are settings all the way down at the bottom. These are for all of your Google Classrooms. So you can change the notifications that you're getting for emails in there. So if you're the teacher who's teaching the class, you can make a decision about what comments you want to see, what emails you want to get, because your Google Classroom emails can be overwhelming. They can blow you up. If you can set a filter in your Gmail that would make it so they kind of go into their folder, but they can become overwhelming. So you can make decisions about, do I need private comments on work? No. Do I want emails and everything? Do I need emails on invitations to co-teach classes? For me, that's a no. Do I need scheduled post published or failed? No. I'm going to always check those things. So I can make decisions about what I want or not want to see. And that makes a big difference. And it also reduces the amount of emails you're getting in. So think about that before you do it. Do not turn it all the way off. Now, when I'm at Salmon, my Salmon account has them all turned off. That's because I'm a co-teacher in a ton of classes. I don't need to get emails on all of them. I'm only in them if they have tech problems. So I only go in when I need to. So you can kind of make that decision. That really does help with a lot of those pieces. So we've done all those big pieces. So before I go into some parent components, I just want to remind you, if you want to work in some collaborative documents, you have Erica at your disposal. So feel free to reach out to her. I put her email in here. She's there Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Really, if you want to learn how to use docs and slides and Jamboard collaboratively with your kids, that's the way to do that. Use Google Classroom more than doing individual assignments, because it's going to be mind-boggling to you. Like, I know you're used to it in paper format, but if you could grade less, you'd feel a little better, right? If you could do some collaborative pieces with your kids, it would really help lessen part of that burden. So parents, let's talk about the parent component. So in your domain, I'm going to go back out to my classroom. In your domain, you should have in your settings wheel under general, the ability to have guardian summaries turned on or off. I'm going to turn mine on, okay? So what does this do? It allows you as a teacher to have your parents get summaries without you doing the work. Google automatically will send them summaries once you have them added into the system. So I'm going to add my class in, all right, and then I'm going to save it. That's a setting I'm going to change. Now, it's not automatic. It's not going to go into your school tool and pull your parents out, because that's not how these systems work. They push a roster in, that's it. So you'll see what I need to do is I can invite a guardian. So let's invite a guardian here, right? I'm going to invite a guardian. Is there a way to manually, I'm going to do it right now, right? So here I am, manually inviting a guardian in to somebody's class. And you'll notice I have more than one guardian on a system, right? So you could turn on guardians and you could only add the ones that ask for it. Now, that being said, if Emily and Sarah both teach 6th grade and Chuck, right? Chuck or Chat, I never remember. The Fippin, right? So if a parent in one of those classes asks for a summary, they want to get an email. And so in Sarah's class, they want an email summary. And Emily and the Fippin turn it on, they will get all 3 of them. It's one or none. Okay, it's all or none, not one or none. It's all or none. Once it's turned on for one, they get all of them, even if they don't request the other classes. Once it's turned on for a parent, they get everything. There's 2 kinds of guardian summaries. There's a weekly summary and there's a daily summary. The daily summary can only occur if they're using something like a Google related email. So like at bmcsd.org, it's from a Google domain. So they had the option between weekly and daily. If they use a non-Google email like Yahoo, AOL, Time Warner Cable, SlickNet, any of those, they only get a weekly option. I can guarantee you most people want the weekly option, right? So, all right, so we're in here. So you can see I added one, it's all done. I have nothing to save, but I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna show you what it looks like so you kind of have an idea. I think I did put an option in there so you could see it. It kind of walks through that little overview, but in here is what one of them looks like. Basically, they get what's missing from last week and what's due next week. So they were using 2, right? What's missing, what's assigned, what's due. And you'll see you have multiple classes. So there's the link. So that's one class, that's another class, there's another class down below. These are the pieces. So that's what a summary looks like. The good news is that as teachers, you can also push a summary to a parent. So I could go in here and I could email all guardians, right? It's going to open something up, right? I don't have email access here, but I could push that out. I could also go in here and I could email all. So if I wanted to send an email to everybody and say, hey, 5-week reports are coming out right now, here's where they blah, 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 whatever. You can also just email one. I can come in here and just email one student. I can also remove guardians. So if I come in here and I say, yeah, Max doesn't have to be in there, can remove them as well. So you can add and push, you can push them in and out without any problem. That typically, I know it's turned on, so that's not usually a big thing. There is a, down in this red part, there is a video in here. I'm not gonna show it, I'm just gonna show you what it is. Okay.
Absolutely fabulous. I shouldn't pick favorites, but I think I add.
Shush. Thank you. I'm gonna stop it. So if I skip the ad, this is a email, or excuse me, a YouTube video that went out in March. It was done by Bill Vaca, who's down here in the Albany region. Does a really nice job of a parent's guide to that summary so they know what it looks like. You know, feel free to use that. It's a simple piece to push out to parents in case they're wondering, you know, like, what does this look like? That's a nice piece to be able to have for them. And then there's also some more information. This is a document that I made just on the FAQ. I basically copied and pasted it out of the support document that Google puts out. But if you want to put something out like that to your parents, feel free to take it. And feel free to leave my contact information on there. I mean, there's no way for them really to email me, but this at least gives you like the reasoning behind it. The reason I put my GCT number on there is it just that anytime we're pushing out something like that, we should be adding that number to it. Okay, so let's talk about collaboration in our students. So when we talk about that, one of the things I like to think about is using templates. So anytime that you can create a template and use it, it's going to make your life much easier. Anytime you can use a template and you can differentiate it and collaborate on it, it's going to make your grading easier, right? So you can have a slide presentation with your students and that they're each doing a different part and still hold them accountable for their own individual work. And if it's shared to them by email, you're going to be able to track who does what work. Remember, we can always use our revision history, or excuse me, our version history to check those things and to follow it. When we do things like that, one of the things I highly recommend is that you use colors to organize your life. So I'm just going to come in here. I'm going to make an assignment. I'm going to show you what I mean. I'm not going to go through all the steps. I'm just going to go into my drive. It'll give you a better idea of what I'm talking about. When I come down and I look for presentations, so I'm going to search for something. I'm going to tell it to only look by presentation type. So I can just see my presentations instead of everything. You'll see that I have some pieces in here of lots, right? Lots and lots. But let's say I'm going to use this one right here. Okay, why not? We're going to use that one, the fave musician, right? So I have it set for students can view. But I could open this, I could make a copy of it, and I could change the main color of this page. So I could have this background on my first page. On this one could be green, right? And I'm gonna done. Boy, that is a really annoying green. I could make a copy. I'd have a second copy of it. I could make the next color blue. Why would I want to do that? Because if I allowed my students, if I uploaded this to them and I made it so students could edit and I only pushed it to some of them, they're easier for me to know which group. So this could be my green group, right? I could have this one be my green group. When I allow students to edit it, I still own the file. They're collaborating on it. I still own the file. I can see what they're doing at all times. Not making a copy. I've got 3 or 4 kids. I think in a slide presentation PowerPoint, 5 is a good number to have in a group. So 5 kids in a group. If I have 25 kids, it's 5 papers instead of 25 papers to look at. It's 5 pieces to look at, right? We're still giving 25 individual grades, but we're only looking at one document for those 5 grades. I'm just trying to think of ways that make more sense. So if I have a green group, then I could have a blue group, then I could have a yellow group. I could change those as need be. And then that just allows me to differentiate and be able to find it in my slides, or not in my slides, in my Google Drive much easier. So if you do anything like that, one of the other things we can also do is when students are in a big deck, you can allow them to edit up and down. You can have 10 students at a time in a slide deck. If you've tried more than that, it doesn't work because you're only allowed to have 10 students, 10 people edit a slide deck at a time. You can have 50 in a document. You can have lots of people looking at it, but only 50 can edit at a time. So think through that process. But you could give a deck out to students that had their name, something like this, where they make a duplicate of a page. So we duplicate the page. They put their own information in it. They edit. They put their name here. They put their information in this content area. And then students could come over here and they could use like, they could come in here, they could highlight, and they could use the comment section and they can comment up and down the slides. So that's a way for students to collaborate and talk to each other in the slides, being appropriate. We always want to remind our students that anything they type in Google is every keystroke is held in Google Vault. That is a component that you can't see, the Google admins can. It sits on the admin console. That vault can always been opened and their record can be pulled out. So if they are digitally bullying each other, we have a record of it. Even if they delete it, we have a record of it. So there's a record within the system somewhere. So if you have digital issues that happen, these can be pulled out. So here is the custom header. If you wish to do something like one of the ones I had. So I'm going to show you this one. I'm just going to pop into it. This is an example of one that I created. So if you create a header, and you notice this was one I taught with, so somebody could make it. You notice this area over here is super grayed out, right? Because this is where all your meet information will go. You can put pictures and all kinds of things, but you can put information over here that your students can see all the time. And you can use a light color in the background. So I did this. George Upham was looking for something. He wanted his contact hours for his students to be visible all the time, and he wanted to pin it as an announcement, which can't do in Google Classroom. So he created this custom banner and he used it in his classroom, and he put his hours over here where his students could see it at all times. So if there's something you want there all the time, you can build it into this custom header. Pretty easy to use. Okay, so I'm going to let you now ask anything you want. So feel free to unmute. If anybody has it, let's do Google Classroom questions. There's lots of best practices down at the bottom. I'm not even going into those because I know you guys can read them. And I also put lots of resources down at the bottom. Any questions? Questions. None? I answered them all. All right, guys. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Remember, you always have Erica as a person to help out. I'm going to stay right in this room. So I'm going to wait. And so in a few minutes, we're going to go into questions. I might have I left myself like 4 minutes, so we're good to go. So I'm going to be here for Google Q&A, and it can be anything. It doesn't have to be Google Classroom related. So thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate it, and have a great day. Bye. So Norma, I love your question about